Welcome to Movie Speeching. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take good care. Damsel is the name of the movie. Please like and subscribe to get every update. In the kingdom of Aurea, the king and his knights wandered the hills in pursuit of a dragon. They follow the monster into a cave, where the group sees something that shocks them. Just then, the dragon arrived and breathed fire to kill most of the knights with one blow. Then it used its tail to capture each of the remaining knights and kill them as well. She finally approached the king, who was on his knees waiting for the end. Several centuries later, in a northern country, Florida and Elodie cut down all the wood they could find. They are the daughters of the local lord, and they do their best to help the people who are suffering from hunger and cold due to the winter that ravages the land. More and more people are leaving every day, which means they may not get a city anytime soon. Suddenly, the sisters saw a carriage passing by, which was strange because they never received visitors. They rush home and find their father Lord Bayford and stepmother Lady Bayford talking to a nun, who says what Elodie will do before leaving. Lord Bayford then tells Elodie that the Aurea royal family wants her to marry their prince. At first, Elodie refuses, but Bayford changes his mind when he points out that their town will receive enough money to save their lives for many years. Sometime later, the whole family set out for Aurea. As they get closer to their destination, the ship enters a thick fog and the group becomes frightened by terrifying figures in the darkness, but they turn out to be two giant dragon statues. After getting off the train, the family was amazed by the prosperity of the territory and the splendor of the castle. The servants took them to their rooms and informed them that they would meet the royal family the next day. Elodie goes out to the balcony to admire the view and notices a girl her age on another balcony, who was quickly taken away by the servants. That night, Elodie couldn't sleep, so she drew. She then went out to the balcony to enjoy the fresh air and noticed that the other girl's room had no light. She was also surprised to see torches in the distance, meaning someone was climbing the mountain in the middle of the night. The next day, Elodie's family meets the royal family. Queen Isabella sends Elodie to meet Prince Henry before the wedding. After the initial awkwardness, Elodie and Henry struck up a conversation and had a very pleasant conversation. After Henry praises Elodie's artistic talent in his letter, Elodie asks him about the torches she saw last night. Henry explains that this is one of 3 ancient ceremonies honoring their ancestors, which is why the wedding takes place on the same day. Meanwhile, at the castle, Lord Bayford has finished discussing the deal with Isabella and seems very upset. Lady Bayford tries to check on him, but he breaks down and promises that everything is fine. Next, Lady Bayford tries to reason with Isabel, who doesn't quite get it. When Lady Bayford explains that she thinks families should stick together and get along, Isabel says it was just a transaction born of necessity. She needs a princess and the land of Bayford needs money. She also reminds Bayford that she is the daughter of a robemaker and therefore should not forget her status. Lady Bayford notices Isabel is mispronouncing Elodie's name and tries to correct her, but Isabel doesn't care and leaves. In the evening, a worried Lady Bayford goes to tell Elodie that something suspicious is going on, so she thinks the wedding should be called off. But before they can argue further, Lord Bayford appears and sends everyone to bed. The next morning, the servants help Elodie prepare for the ceremony. She is given a beautiful dress that includes a blunt dagger and a scent diffuser. The wedding goes well. Henry and Elodie exchange rings, kiss, and Elodie receives her own crown. Elodie then says goodbye to her family and gets into a carriage with Henry, who explains that they will attend an ancient ceremony in the mountains. They climb a stone staircase and Elodie is shocked to see a group of people wearing scary golden masks, not to mention Isabel dressed as a nun. The queen gives Elodie a coin and says she will help protect the kingdom. Then they go inside while Isabel tells a story. When their ancestors arrived on the island, they discovered that there lived a dragon, the last of its kind. The dragon attacked the village as soon as it saw humans settling in, so the king gathered his soldiers and tried to fight the beast. However, the dragon killed everyone except the king, who had to leave his 3 daughters to share the island. While listening to the story, Elodie noticed that people were looking at her fearfully and that they were crossing a dangerous bridge over a deep chasm. Isabel then explains that the king's sacrifice is something they celebrate in every generation before cutting off Henry and Elodie's hands. She gathered them together to mix the blood and covered them with a cloth, announcing that Elodie was now officially of royal blood. Elodie then threw the coin into the abyss, thinking the ritual was over. Henry carried her across the bridge, then suddenly apologized and threw her into the abyss. Screaming as she fell, Elodie went through brunch until she fell into a mud puddle and fainted. She woke up soon after with many bruises on her body, but she still stood up and started screaming for help. There was no one left on the bridge, but her voice awakened the dragon hidden at the bottom of the cave. Elodie then cried as her despair turned to anger and she grabbed the jewelry before trying to escape. Unfortunately, she fell and was injured again. At that moment, she saw other gems that did not belong to her and realized that the royal family had been sacrificing girls to dragons for many years. Suddenly she heard a noise and turned around to see there was light inside the cave, so she went in and saw a burning bird. Elodie immediately used dirt to put out the fire, but it was too late, 4 birds had died. Suddenly a roar echoed through the cave and hundreds of burning birds appeared, flying above Elodie for several minutes before falling dead around her. With the small bodies acting as lights, Elodie tried to find a way out but only stood there frozen when she saw the dragon coming. Elodie flees behind a stalagmite as the dragon begins to speak, saying that each generation of royalty must pay, and she can feel it in Elodie's blood. Looking at her scar, Elodie realized that the ceremony was intended to deceive the dragon. The dragon tells Elodie to run and she screams, trying to enter a tunnel as the dragon breathes fire behind her. The fire also entered the tunnel, but Elodie was able to find a safe place in time. There was a burned body there, and she realized it was the girl she saw on the balcony. When she hears the dragon chasing her again, Elodie tries to escape through a small hole, but her dress gets stuck in it. The fire got closer and closer, so after much effort, Elodie was able to remove the crinoline and escape, hiding in a smaller cave. Unfortunately, the fire still spread to her feet and burned her, causing her to scream in pain. The dragon heard it but couldn't reach it because there wasn't enough room for its giant body. When the dragon disappeared, Elodie remembered the blunt dagger and sharpened it on a rock to cut part of her dress. The pain in her leg was unbearable, but she tried to overcome it and bandaged the wound with a torn tissue. She then opened the diffuser and took some fire from it to use as a lantern. Now she can explore the cave and finds a very narrow passage. She started crawling over it and her dress got stuck in it, so she pulled until it was freed and slipped in the process. Elodie tried her best to hold on, but her arms hurt and got tired. She fell back and the flame from the diffuser went out. Refusing to give in, Elodie stood up, clinging to the wall to walk, determined to reach the light she saw from afar. After a very difficult walk, she left the tunnel and almost fell off the edge of the cliff. She could still see the light on the other side, so after taking off her wedding ring and throwing it into the abyss, Elodie backed up and ran to make a big jump. The other side of the cliff was slippery. She couldn't hold on tightly, but fortunately, when she slipped, her waist got stuck on a rock. It broke quickly, but that gave her enough time to pull out the dagger and stick it in a crack to hold on tight. She then used the dagger to climb the rest of the way and discovered that the light was coming from cute glowing slugs. After checking that they weren't biting, Elodie tore off her puffy sleeve and put a bunch of slugs in it to make a new lantern. Then she went a little further and found a small lake, but when she tried to drink the water, she immediately spit it out. Turns out cave plants make it taste disgusting. However, there was also ice dripping from the ceiling, so Elodie had to stand under it to catch any drops of ice she could. Suddenly, the ice began to melt faster and the light shining through it seemed reddish, so Elodie opened her eyes and saw the dragon using fire to penetrate the ice. Elodie runs away as the dragon breaks through the ice and lands in the tavern in pursuit of her, again not getting far as Elodie enters another tunnel that is too small for the giant beasts. In this small tavern, Elodie finds an inscription on the wall that says it's safe here, she can't come, and is signed with the letter V. Looking around, Elodie finds the dresses of many girls, and on another wall, the names are added. For many years, including the letter V belonging to a girl named Victoria. Elodie took a moment to mourn their fate before removing the bandage from her leg, which didn't look any better. Elodie then tried to sleep while holding the lantern. Suddenly, she begins to see ghosts of previous sacrifices, suffering, fear, and betrayal. Victoria writes her name on the wall, then suddenly turns around and tells Elodie that it was all a lie. At that moment, Elodie woke up and discovered bullet wounds all over her leg wound. She panicked and started removing them, only to discover that their slime had healing properties and her legs were fine now. She puts a bullet in her other major wound and apologizes for underestimating her. Feeling better, Elodie looks around better and finds a map on the wall, which means at least one girl got out. The map tells her that she will find 3 forks in the tunnel and she will have to go to the middle fork, where she will have to follow the crystals and music to the outside. Elodie then tore off all the parts of her costume, wrote her name on the wall, and took the fork in the middle, ignoring the dragon's growl. Finally, she heard a small melody and went a little further to find a wall covered in crystals, which were the source of the noise and also glowed in the sunlight as they were right below the exit. Nearby there is a crown with a V on it, meaning Victoria has stepped out. As the crystals became sharp, Elodie tore her dress further to cover her arms and legs, then used her crown to begin climbing. Unaware that the dragon was watching, Elodie tried to climb back up and a crystal shattered under her hand, causing her to fall, but she used the crown to hold on at the last second. Elodie then heard the dragon nearby, so she rushed to the exit and discovered that she was at the edge of a hole very high in the mountainside. Overcome with grief, Elodie fell to her knees and cried. Suddenly, the neighing of horses helped Elodie notice a group of horsemen approaching the mountain. She tried to scream for help, but at that moment the dragon flew towards her and blocked the hole. Elodie stepped back just in time and noticed another message on the wall saying "Not safe," signed by V. There was a body nearby, meaning Victoria died there and never came out. The dragon prepared to shoot, but only stopped when he heard a male voice shouting Elodie's name. When the flying dragon goes to investigate, it is revealed that Lord Bayford has gone with 2 knights and a guide in search of Elodie. They enter the cave with a rope and begin searching the area, so Elodie uses the sound of their voices to find their way back. Upon entering a new tunnel, she is shocked to discover a nest with 3 dead baby dragons and remembers Victoria's words, which make her understand that Isabel lied. The dragon is not her last species, and she did not. Firstly, a flashback shows that the king entered the tavern precisely to kill all the children, so the dragon's attack was an act of revenge. She killed all the knights as at first, but when it was the king's turn, the dragon told him that death would be too easy and he would have to suffer just like her. Since then, the royal family has fed the dragon 3 women whose blood was mixed to make them look like royal daughters. Elodie later finds her father and his men, but she has not yet appeared for safety. The dragon appeared and grabbed a knight, sending him flying before dropping him from a great height. The knight bounced off the rock and fell to the ground, dying instantly. As the riding instructor goes into hiding, the dragon grabs the second knight and crushes him under its feet before interrogating Bayford. He explained that he was there to save his daughter and tried to attack him with his sword, but the dragon caught him with its tail and disarmed him before releasing him. "I'm down." While Elodie stealthily waited for the right moment, the dragon told Bayford to call his daughter. Bayford decides to give a heartfelt speech about how sorry he is and admits that he made a terrible mistake. Then he yells at Elodie not to go out. Causing the dragon to push him, she got down and stabbed him in the heart with her claws. Elodie couldn't help but cry out and the dragon started to look for her, but fortunately at that moment the guard also made a noise and the dragon chased after it thinking it was Elodie. The dragon disappears, and Elodie says goodbye to her father and kisses him on the forehead before dying. She then used the rope he left behind to start walking out of the pub. Meanwhile, the dragon found the guide and crushed him to death before attacking Elodie, who had managed to climb up fast enough to avoid the fire engulfing the entrance. Elodie immediately mounted her father's horse, but only rode for a moment before jumping down and hiding under some rocks. As the horse continued, the dragon was fooled and continued to chase it to burn it alive. The dragon then breathed fire into the clouds, causing a terrible storm, a sign that the agreement had been broken. At the castle, Isabel notices this and immediately sends her knights to kidnap Floria. Lady Bayford tries to stop them but is stabbed in the process. Moments later, when the fire was extinguished, Elodie came out of her hiding place and ran into Lady Bayford, who had ridden all the way here while still bleeding. When Elodie learned what had happened, she promised to save her sister and take the horse back to the mountain. Meanwhile, Floria is brought to the bridge, but Henry refuses to perform the ritual with a child. Isabel ignores her and instead uses her own blood, cutting off Flora's hand to make the mixture before throwing her into the pit. When Elodie reached the bridge, everyone had left and Floria, unconscious, was captured by the dragon, who had not yet killed her because he wanted to trick Elodie into coming to save her sister. Elodie, in desperation, takes the rope back to the pub and uses her previous experience to follow the same path much faster. After rechecking the map to find the dragon's lair, Elodie armed herself with her father's sword and prepared a trap for the dragon. This trap consists of armor and a wire that burns under a small flame. Elodie left, and when the rope finished burning, the armor fell, causing the dragon to leave the lair to search for the source of the noise. This allows Elodie to sneak into the lair and wake Floria, who walks slowly because she injured her leg. At that moment the dragon discovered the trap and returned to its lair, so Floria hid while Elodie drew her sword and waited. She tried to explain to them that they were all tricked by the queen, but the dragon did not believe her and tried to breathe fire. Elodie stabbed herself in the mouth with her sword to redirect the attack, but still fell off the edge of the lair, burning her arms and shoulders in the process. As the dragon pulled the sword away, Elodie landed in a lake and swam away just as Floria threw another sword at her. Suddenly, the dragon jumped on her and held her while stabbing her with his claws. Before he could kill her, Elodie pulled out a dagger and stabbed the dragon in the eye, forcing it to throw Elodie away. Elodie then picked up the sword and ran towards the dragon, who was having trouble seeing with one eye. She tried to stab the monster in the chest, but it didn't do much damage and the dragon caught up with her again. Elodie then stabbed the dragon in the leg, causing it to fall again. As the dragon got closer, Elodie noticed dust bouncing off a curved stalagmite, which gave her an idea. Elodie stood in front of the stalagmite and told the dragon to burn it, so the dragon breathed fire. However, Elodie moves at the last second and the fire bursts out of the stalagmite, causing her to land on the dragon and eventually knocking her over. Elodie then shows the dragon the scar on her hand to prove that the beast killed innocent girls and not members of the royal family. The dragon asked her to end it, but Elodie dropped the sword and refused to continue this cycle of hatred. She then took a series of slugs and placed them on the dragon's body so that it could fully recover. Meanwhile, at the castle, another marriage is held to deceive the third daughter of this generation. Suddenly, a coin rolls on the altar and Elodie enters, telling the bride to take her family and flee. Elodie then tells the citizens that they can also run away if they want, but only the servants will take her seriously and leaves. At that moment, the dragon appeared and breathed fire at everyone present, killing Isabel and everyone in the royal family to finally put an end to it. While everyone was panicking, Henry closed his eyes and accepted the punishment because he knew he deserved it. Soon, the castle collapsed, but Elodie left with her head held high. A few days later, a recovered Elodie, Floria, and Lady Bayford prepare to leave on a ship filled with gold and supplies for their people. They agree to manage their land together, and Elodie even begins calling Bayford mother instead of stepmother. During the return journey, the dragon flies nearby and shows mutual respect to Elodie. Thank you for watching. See you on the next video.